Hello, Booktube. This evening I am going to be replying to a tag. Now, I can just imagine that what you're seeing on camera now could be a little disturbing. I know some people are more frightened by esoteric, occultish things. I am going to be responding to David at Polyglot Reading, who started a new tag called the Momento Mori tag. Now, Memento Mori means memento of death, remembrance of death. And just for a little historical background, for those of you who know this already, so sorry, you'll be a bit bored, but only a bit bored. Memento Mori, in the 16th and 17th centuries, it was considered a good thing to always keep something in front of you that would remind you of the fact that you were mortal, that your life was short, and that you would die. And that was probably because life was very short and very precarious in those centuries. Now, David is using the term as a way of asking some questions about our reading habits and how realization of our own mortality is having any kind of effect on our reading habits. And it's appropriate, I think, for those of us older booktubers. Maybe we think about this more. There might be some of you going, I don't even go there yet, and that's absolutely fine. Although one never knows with life how it will go. But definitely when you are older, you think about these things. So I'm going to answer David's 8 questions. But while I'm doing that, I thought, well, just for once, just for a change, I'm going to try to be entertaining. Yes, I know. Everyone prepare yourselves. But as it happens, there are 8 questions in this tag, and I own 8 different tarot decks. And since this Momento Mori tag is about the contemplation and the understanding of death, I thought what I would do is that as I answered each of the 8 questions, I would open up one of my 8 decks and find the death card. Because the death card, I'll give you a little bit again. If you don't know tarot, there are tarot readers, bad tarot readers, who use the death card to frighten their querent. They shouldn't. It's very bad practice. The death card is not a negative card, but it can be used that way by questionable tarot practitioners. But good ones should help someone if they draw the death card to understand that it has wider meaning, that for everything that ends, something else begins, and that life is a continual cycle of being born, growing, aging, dying, birth, and it continues in the same way the seasons continue, and certainly in the Northern Hemisphere, hence the green man that you can see here. In the Northern Hemisphere, you know that spring and summer are times for birth and growth, and autumn and winter are times for decay and death, but they naturally then, the year always leads back, as pray it is doing this year, into spring again. So that's enough of an intro, I think, and I'm going to now start, and we'll take on David's questions. So David's first question is this: how many books will you be able to read before you die? Considering your age and statistical life expectancy. So while I'm answering that question, I am going to find the death card in this. This is probably in terms of neo-paganism, this deck is considered the original modern deck. There are much, much older medieval decks that you can buy, but I don't know, this is probably the one that was first commercially made available, the Rider-Waite Tarot. And its symbolism is usually copied by other decks. But that's not answering David's question, is it? So we're going to do that. We're going to answer David's question. Joe, you can see the Ouroboros there. I know you want to get a close-up of that. There we go. Okay. So how many books will I be able to read before I die? Well, according to UK statistics for the East Midlands, which is where I currently live, my life expectancy as a woman is 21 years past the age of 65. Now, I'm 60 now, so it looks like, all things being well, I should get to 86 years. Now, I have several females in the family, aunts, who have made it to their late 80s and early 90s. So I think genetically, too, my chances of making that figure, well, they're doing all right so far. Let's just put it that way. Excuse me, laying the cards down here. Let's put the box over here. So that means I will have 26 years of reading going forward. 26 years left. Now, right now, while I'm working full time, I can manage to read between 50 and 60 books per year. All right, I'm just paging through the cards. Let me get them a better on the camera so that you can see them. 50 to 60 books while I'm working full time. However, hopefully that will be, well, I'm planning to try to retire when I'm 70. So that's 10 years of working full time. Then I will probably scale down to part-time work if I can. And with the idea of retiring maybe 73. Let's just pull that number out of the air for no real good reason. Death is going to be way down here, isn't it? I just thought you'd enjoy looking at all the illustrations. I'm going to speed it up a little bit to see if I can go faster. So let's do the maths on this, right? So we've got 10 years at 50 books per year. That's 600 books. Then we think we've got 3 years where I think I could get up to 75 if I was working part-time. 75. Oh, there's the devil. He's made an appearance, as always. And then if I were fully retired, I do think I could manage 100 books per year because I would definitely do a lot of reading in my spare time. So I added that up. So we've got 600 books while I was working full-time, 225 if I went part-time. And then when I retired, we were looking at 1,300 books if I can manage to live from the age of 73 to the age of 86. Wish me luck, right? Wish me luck. So that comes to a total of 2,125 books. Now, we found him. We found him. Okay, the rest of the cards will go away now because what I'm going to do is keep the death card out for each deck. There we go. So you can have a good look at each one. Now, death, as you notice, is a knight. And knights, it is important to say, are always on the move. And death certainly is always on the move. Can never quite tell where he'll turn up. But he is on a white horse as well. So there's some positive symbolism in that. This card, you can tell the positivity in it if I just show you, is that in the background there, you can see the sun. You can still see the sunlight. And you see a white rose on his flag. This one really does not emphasize rebirth quite so much. And it's probably it's unfortunate because depending on the kind of death card you draw, it can be more difficult to give people a positive take on it. And I think this is one of those death cards where I would be careful. I'm always careful about what deck I use, especially if I'm doing a reading for someone who's a little bit creeped out by tarot. I probably would not use the Rider-Waite because its symbolism is very old. And this really does look like a scene from the bubonic plague. And it's not very helpful. So anyway, let's go back to these 2,125 books. Now, we'll leave the card there for the moment. 2,125. I'm not a person who often rereads books. That's just me. But I'll allow 25 rereads. And that way, that gets me down to 2,100 books that I get to read. And unlike David, I have limited myself to one language by being lazy, I think. Let's just be honest. So I have 2,100 new books that I can write, 2,100 new books written or translated into English. That's not a bad number. Right, question 2. David asks, how does this number of books affect your choice of books? And while I answer that question, we are going to look at the Art Nouveau tarot. Now, this tarot deck I did not buy for myself. My number 1 Scorpio bought this deck, and when she got it and looked through the cards at home, she didn't really care for it. And I admit, it's not my favorite deck either, but we didn't worry about that. She and I came to an agreement that we didn't think it was, we thought it was, well, just the people are just a little bit too beautiful, as you can see by this fair young man at the front here. And so we just didn't like it. We didn't feel, there was something about it that bothered us, but I keep it anyway. So we're going to look for the death card in here. And I'm going to answer this question. How does this number of books affect my choice? Well, I feel that number's pretty good if I get to indulge. And so I've got some scope for doing a lot of different things. Let me give you a bit of personal history, though. In 2015, before 2015, I'd have called myself a mood reader. You can see, look at this. I mean, there's just some, come on, camera focus. There we go. Yeah, there's some really scary. It's just too pretty, this deck, but never mind. Let's turn it around so you can see the Knight of Cups, who is, of course, movie star, gorgeous. Everybody is just a little bit too movie star in this deck. And that's one of the reasons why neither of us really liked it. I noticed that the phone is having fun focusing. Can you not focus, please, phone? I don't usually record using my phone, and I can see why, because mine is continually. Well, that's not bad. I don't mind the ace cards. They're beautiful. I think that's what attracted the beautiful colors and the Art Nouveau, borders and so on. But I think when she got it, she just thought, wait a second. Oh, see that the Ace of Swords is also very beautiful. Very beautiful, that card. Okay, but we are looking for death. I don't know what could death look like in a deck like this, where everybody is so darn beautiful. Oh, and there's the aces. See, the aces are spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. In fact, if they kept people out of these cards, I probably would have bought this deck and liked it. So there we go. And we're still looking. There's the sun. He looks sunny. And the magician and the priestess. See, they all look like they were cast by Hollywood directors, which is annoying. Absolutely annoying. They shouldn't. They should look real. Some of them should look old. It's important. Some of them are old. Here he is. Oh my goodness. Is that not the campus death? My word. Well, there he is. There you can. I know immediately now. I would have taken one look at this death card and thought, no, stop it. But to be fair, I mean, I might do it if just because this death card, it makes me think of Terry Pratchett's Mort, David. It is just so silly that it makes me. It does. I'm laughing at death, which it's well. I don't know if that's a good thing. But there, I can see that although death is walking over a carpet of flowers and crushing them, there are flowers, and that. So to me, there is still an interesting allusion to new life, as well as to death, which I think is important. And the skeleton himself is surrounded by a light aura. So I could use that, but I must admit, he just I just really can't take that death seriously. So let me talk now. Let me just put this crazy death down and talk about books and reading habits. So before 2015, I was a mood reader, and I didn't have any plan apart from just get through quantities and quantities and quantities of books, good, bad, middle. And then I enrolled in the Open University because I had always wanted a degree, and particularly an English literature degree. And then my reading from 2015 until 2023 was dictated by the courses that I took. However, the advantage of the courses was how they taught me to close read and how to gather textual evidence in support of an idea. So that degree finished last May, and of course I started my Booktube channel 2 months before that. And really, it is Booktube that deserves credit for making me start thinking more about which books do I really want to read. So Booktube is what's made me think of quality as much as quantity. And Booktube is introducing me to books and authors I did not know before. And so I would say my planning right now as to what I'm going to read, my choice of books, it's at an early stage. But I do have some idea about what these 2100 books will be. I have there's a BBC 100 books to read before you die list, significantly. And I'm using that because I've read 48 of the 100, but I'm a little disappointed by some of those books that are on that list, but I haven't read. So I'm wanting to work my way through that. I've specifically made a list called 70 by 70, which is 70 books that I absolutely must get read in the next 10 years. And they come, some of them from that BBC list, but they also come from Booktube recommendations, books that I just think they're too important for me not to have read at least in the next 10 years. So I've got that list as well. I also have, a little bit like Joseph Francis Burton, I have a little project. I want to really hit Russian literature in a way I've not really read anything, unless you count War and Peace, which I read when I was 14 because I was dared to read it. Now, that doesn't make for the best kind of reading, but I did read it. At age 14, I read Tolstoy's War and Peace all the way through, including that funny essay at the end. Didn't really entirely understand, but did meet Napoleon for the first time and thought he was kind of interesting. So, yeah, I really need to go back and hit Russian literature. That's why I read Natasha's Dance and I have some other books about Russian culture, Russian history lined up to kind of get myself ready. So I have a really thorough background to start hitting the novels themselves. Okay, question 3. What will happen to your book collection once you have passed away? Well, let's look at this tarot deck. This is my most recent purchase. This is Isa Beniston's The Gentle Thrills Tarot. Now, this was a pandemic tarot deck. This visual artist who always loved to work in bright colors in gouache was trapped at home and going crazy. And so she decided she was going to do a tarot deck. And so all her cards, you will see, I mean, if you think the box is bright, the cards just get so crazy. There is the back pattern, but if I turn the box over, oh, and get rid of the little book. Every tarot deck comes with a little book, very important. You can just see she just had so much fun. Now this, I felt, was the kind of tarot deck I might start with if somebody was a little frightened by the cards, because it still uses the standard, what we would call the Rider-Waite symbolism, but it does so in a really light-hearted, bright, colorful, happy way. And I'm just going to start paying, because you're just going to love all these cards. So I'm just going to walk through them. There's Judgment. There's the Sun. You see, I mean, I don't know how anybody could feel threatened by these cards because they're just so beautiful. So beautiful. There's the Knight of Swords. Oh, the Queen of Swords, possibly be a little threatened by that one. But one should be with the Queen of Swords. So back to my book collection. I have never been interested in collecting books as objects or buying rare books. I fail to see the point. In fact, it kind of annoys me when the book, and I'm sorry, book collectors, I don't mean this as an attack on you personally, but it annoys me because to me the value of a book are the ideas that went down on the pages, and therefore the object being something. Oh, that's a nice chariot. I thought that was the devil, but that's the chariot. The thought of a book being valuable as an object, it annoys me in a way. So, and I know you're going to think, what? Seriously? No, you got to understand. And I do, but you know, I'm never going to take part. So my book collection is probably worth the least of anyone's book collection, because I see people buying beautiful hardback books. I hate hardbacks. They're heavy. They take up ridiculous amounts of space. I do not have this space. There it is. Okay. Now you see, I like that death card. And I like it because the hand that is emerging out of a plant, a rose. So I just feel there's more positivity in that card. We can start talking about death and rebirth. And I like that. I like that card a great deal. And I do think if I drew that, or if I do a tarot reading, I don't touch the cards. My querent touches the cards. In fact, we usually work remotely via mobile phone, so I don't even see their facial expressions or hand movements or anything. They just photograph the card they've drawn and they send it to me on WhatsApp, and then we do the reading. But I love that card. I just think that's fantastic. And there's an echo of the High Priestess there, because there's two towers, and I like that. I like the fact that death is female or appears female. That's also very positive. Again, I just think there's an intuitiveness and a life-givingness in that. Yeah, nice death card. So going back to my book collection, well, when I die, I'm pretty sure it's going to get packed up, probably by one of those removal agencies that clear out houses. But you know, you tend to have a lot of objects in your house that aren't worth a great deal. And my books would be like that. So I think this removal firm would just take them. Maybe they sell them on to secondhand bookshops. I have no idea. I imagine they just take it to the local recycling center and drop it in the skip. And, well, I plan to be cremated, so I don't know why I'm worried about what happens to my books. If they get buried and mulched and returned to the soil, fine. They're all paperbacks. You know, I tried very much not to have any plastic if I can, so I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be absolutely fine. Question 4. Is there a book that helps you cope with the disturbing fact of a limited lifespan? Well, books in general, and my own imagination, they've always been my way of coping with life in all its less happy, more disturbing aspects, right? I mean, that's why back in October when Hamas attacked Israel and Israel counterattacked, my response was to select a book that would remind me of the historical context. You know, when the present doesn't feel fully understandable, or it's too much, I will go and read about the past, factually or fictionally. Understanding the past somehow helps me cope with the present, and I suppose it helps me cope with the future as well. So let's have a look at this tarot deck. This one I bought, when we were on holiday in Norfolk, and I've forgotten how to get the box open. Oh, yes, there's a magnet. There's a magnet, of course there is. There's a magnet, of course there's a little book, rather a large book in this case. There we are. Oh, and then here is the deck. I love this because everything's sort of sepia. And you can tell I have so many rather brightly colored decks. I thought this one was quite different because it was all sort of shades of brown. Let's see now. I haven't shuffled this one in a long time. So let's see. 4 of Swords, 2 of Wands. But yeah, I was always a dreamy kid, and books help me. I think books help most of us on Booktube cope. There's not much we can do. I love these. Some of these are fantastic, but all very subdued. There, now there's a Magician. Do you see? That's a lovely. Little bit Crowley, isn't it? Although I don't remember him shaving his head at any time. Knight of Pentacles. Ace of Cups, that's very lovely. Knight of Wands. King of Pentacles, 5 of Wands. Let's move through 8. I mean, it could be at the bottom. Oh, no, there's the Devil. Oh, now the Devils are very interesting. Wait, let's get it over here. Get myself... Whoa. That. I like that. It's very sort of H.G. Wells. I guess that's what's making me think of. There's Lovers. Justice, very nice card there. Strength. So I'm sorry some of them are upside down. I do use reversals, so in my decks I don't make sure the cards are all the right way up. So apologies. We should come. Oh, there's the Emperor. He looks a little bit like the Magician. Oh, yeah. Okay, interesting fellow. Where are we here? Ace of Swords. Oh, 3 of Swords. That's a love. That card stands for sorrow. Yes, that does look like that's very good. Okay. And 8 of Cups and Judgment. If you know the tarot symbolism, you're going to be going, of course it does. Yes, the Tower. 2 of Cups. We're going to get right to the bottom of this deck, aren't we? 7 of Cups, 7 of Pentacles, 7 of Swords, 2 of Pentacles. Come on, where's Death? Death is always somewhere, right? Oh, Wheel of Fortune's nice. I like that. There we go. Ace of Wands, Knight of Cups. Oh my goodness, we are going to go through this whole deck. Well, I hope you're enjoying it because there we go. Okay, that's an interesting. Again, there's not a great deal of emphasis on rejuvenation, which I feel is central to the Death card. There isn't just death. There's a lot else going on, but there we go. That's what they choose to show. So that is question 4 done, and 4th Death card done. Question 5. Which book on this topic do you consider the most witty or entertaining one? That's an interesting one. Well, this is my wittiest and most entertaining tarot deck. I know that. Now, I've lost the box for this, and I believe this deck is called Granny Jones, made by an Australian artist, and you're going to love this. This is definitely the deck I use if I'm working with someone who's never worked with tarot before, who's a little spooked by it. They've maybe heard lots of media misrepresentations, or they've gone to a bad tarot reader and they need to start again to try to just take some of the woo-woo out of it. So let's see if we can find the Death card in here, and I'll try to answer this question. So which book? Well, I say The Book Thief. The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. It's a novel that is narrated by Death, of all things, if you can imagine it, narrated by Death, but it's also the story of a young girl who's surrounded by death, but she, being so young, is still curious and full of life. And I've recommended this book to a lot of people, to readers, and to those whom I wouldn't call readers, because they maybe pick up a novel every 2 or 3 years, when they're on holiday or if they're feeling sick. Otherwise they don't have any interest in books. But to date, everyone that I have steered towards The Book Thief has read it and loved it. So The Book Thief would be my recommendation as a book to help. It's witty and entertaining, but it does deal with death quite directly. And yet somehow you finish it. Oh, yes. Now I remember why I loved this deck. Because when I saw the death card, I thought, if you need to help somebody read tarot and you don't want the death card to come across as gruesome or gloomy, can you see the words written on the side? Transformation, change, move ahead, renewal. So there is death, yes, but on the farther horizon, there is new life. There is something new. There's a beacon. There's a beacon. So this deck, the reason I bought it was as soon as I saw the death card, and I will often go first to the death card if I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to buy a deck. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, this woman who painted this deck gets it. She understands what the death card is about. So that is why Granny Jones is one of my number one favorite decks. Question 6. Do you have a specific nonfiction book on the topic of death that you'd like to recommend? I don't really. I'll say this. In common with David and Joseph, I take an interest in sacred books and mythology. I have an English translation of the Quran. I have more than one copy of the Bible. I do like the King James Bible, even though I no longer am a believer. But there's something about that book it remains. I do not know what it's, particularly the King James. I think there is something there's almost an Englishness. There's something connected with English culture and English identity in the King James Bible as well. And that's a whole other topic that I'm not going to get into. But like Joseph, I also take a great interest in mythology. I haven't read any Mircea Eliade, but I need to. I have read several works by Joseph Campbell and then other books on Buddhism, Taoism, and of course, neo-paganism. And of course, it was in 2001 that I started to teach myself tarot symbolism. And then I only read tarot for myself or very close friends. I don't charge. I don't like the idea of charging money. I figure if someone is charging you money, how do you know that they're not doing the reading in such a way as to emotionally manipulate you to need another reading? That's just my take on it. So I do not charge. If I do a tarot reading for someone, it's free. And I have a whole different way of doing that. But I find the cyclical concept of reality that neo-paganism has borrowed from older religions really helpful. As I say, we've been looking at the death card, that idea of things coming around again, things dying so that other things can live, that there's always a cycle of death and birth going on constantly. And so it's not so important that there is a particular death because life continues in general. Let's look at this deck. This was the third deck I ever bought. In Vancouver, in fact, I can remember exactly where. There's a tarot shop in Vancouver, in Canada, at the Granville Island Market, which is down in the old docks in False Creek Harbor. And I saw the artwork on this. And again, it's very simple artwork. Perhaps people might think too simple, but again, I liked it because I felt the deck was friendly. And I'm always looking for friendly decks that don't freak people out. Because I don't want to do that. So I really loved. So they're whimsical. There's a bit of whimsy in there. There's a bit of fun. There's the Three of Cups. You can see. So there's a lot of beauty in here. This also is reminding me, David, of Leonora Carrington's paintings a little bit, just a little bit. Not entirely, but that's why I love this deck. So let's see if we can find. Oh, the Fool is lovely. Bless him. Let's just see if we can find death in here. These are a little bit, the paper is heavier, so I've got to be careful that I am not picking up too many cards at once, that I am doing one at a time. So there we go. Ace of Cups, Nine of Cups, Eight of Swords. So that's my answer to the question. I guess I can't really recommend any one nonfiction book, but I do think it helps to cope with death, to study a number of religions or faiths or mythologies, because it's too easy to put your faith in one thing. But it is, I think, a good idea to understand that there is an overriding body of belief in things going on in some way or another. But because everybody disagrees, at least you know, well, we're not sure. We're not sure, but it's okay. You go. People have gone along with it for centuries, even though we are not sure. There it is. There it is. Yep, and this is exactly why I chose this card. Can you not see? So it is not only is it about death, but it is immediately about rebirth, and it uses the symbolism of the phoenix. Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So, of course, that is why I got this deck. Question 7. Humor can be helpful to confront death. Do you have a favorite witty quote on this topic? I do not have a quote, but I do have a weird suggestion. Some years back, I listened to a podcast where the speaker was someone with a terminal illness, and they talked about how they were advised by their therapist to sit down and write a document about what they wanted to happen after their death. So every little detail, what they wanted to happen to their body, what kind of memorial they wanted, even down to the food and the music and anything else, and any instructions or other words that they wish to leave certain loved ones. Just create like a death journal where you get it all out and you say, after my death, this is what I want people to remember or think about or do. I decided to go ahead and write one of those. I didn't do a really long one. It was just a few pages. But oh, wow. It was a fantastic exercise. I tell you why, because I haven't been in the position that I think Joe hints that he's been in, where he's faced death. I have never truly faced death, okay? So it's important, though, because once you face it, you faced it. But the journal did create a kind of a little death, if that makes any sense. Just a little tiny death, and thinking about those who survived me, going on and living their lives, and trying to think of how I could just ease their pain instead of worrying about my own. Well, for some reason, facing those issues, it just completely helped with any anxiety about death. And so writing a document of that kind, I found it really helpful. Now, that leads beautifully into this tarot deck, because Voyager Tarot was designed by James Wanless, PhD. He is a therapist, and he uses tarot as therapy. Now, so he doesn't read tarot cards in what I'd call the usual way, and his deck is not a usual deck. His deck is designed not with the usual Rider-Waite symbolism. He simply tries to create associations in people's minds, so they are sort of photo montage cards. He still, however, uses the suits and so on, and there may be some hints of things that have to do with the Rider-Waite, but he keeps it very, very, you can see, it's a good deck for free association. And that's what he uses. And he draws these cards and just helps people to get in touch with their subconscious, because I find this too when you are, and this is often how I do tarot reading, is you let people pick their own cards, and then you ask them how they're reacting to the cards, what is catching their eye, why, what associations they have with the image that is drawing their attention, that kind of thing, because that usually brings people to what they're already thinking about or deciding upon. People usually know what they truly want, but it's hard to get that up from the subconscious. So sometimes showing them some tarot symbols and then letting them talk about those symbols, what they truly want and what they truly need, tends to come up from out of their subconscious. That's a beautiful one for the priestess. And it's the moon, 9 of Wands. I don't want to take too long. I'm worried about how long this video is, but maybe you're enjoying looking at the cards. I love. Look, oh, the Tower is fantastic. Yeah, very good. Hanged Man, 2 of Worlds. And I cannot remember at all. It's been a long time since I looked at this deck. Ah, there we go. There's his death card. So again, something very different. And I don't know if he's chosen the symbols that he has so that people can deal with their anxieties about death and loss. Because you've got to remember, this is a deck designed for therapy rather than for, I don't know, dealing with tarot symbolism, which then might deal with the cyclical nature of life. So this is interesting because it looks like there's a river running on one side of the card, and there's some crystals and stars. So there is an element of rebirth because, of course, stars we are all just stardust. So we are the result of the death of a star. So Wanless might be thinking that way. But again, these are the associations that you can come up with, and yeah, it'd be interesting to see how people react. So I did like that because he's obviously doing some kind of thinking. I'd be interested to hear him talk about his death card and how he put those images together. And I've saved my favorite for last. The deck that you're going to see now is the deck that I most often use. It's the first deck that I bought it myself, but I didn't choose it myself. Someone else recommended it, and so I bought it. Now, I put it in the spooky bag because there's a lot about this deck that makes people a bit freaked out. But I don't know. It is the deck that has moved me the most and given me the most help whenever I've needed it from cards myself. And I've found other people, when I've let them do a reading with this deck, they often prefer it. But this is the infamous, I guess you could say, Thoth deck, which was put together by Aleister Crowley, we all know, the famous occultist, and the illustrations were by Lady Frida Harris. It was put together in the 1930s, I believe. And so we'll turn it over. But I do love Frida Harris's paintings, and the use of color here is as symbolic as all the images on it. It does conform loosely to the Rider-Waite symbolism, but when I say loosely, I do mean loosely. But the death card on here is the most magnificent one that I've seen, and so we'll try and find it. But let's talk about the last question. Question 8. Does this tag make you feel uneasy, or are you quite relaxed about this topic? Well, I suppose because I've spent so much time looking up death cards. Look at that Emperor, wowie. Death cards in my tarot decks, and telling you that I decide on whether to buy a tarot deck based, first of all, on what the death card looks like. The death card matters to me. Death is so pivotal. Everything hinges on it, even though we don't want to talk about it. And so I think we should talk about it. I think we should talk about it quite frankly, because everything does, in the end, hinge on it. Let's turn that around. Me with my reversals. Oh, there we go. And the Queen of Wands just defies me by being upside down. Anyway, I love that. The Six of Swords is the science and rationality card, and it's so beautiful. There we go. And the Empress. Where is that death card? It is magnificent. And it shows Crowley. Here it is. I don't believe we discovered the helical shape of DNA at the time Lady Frida Harris painted this death card. But now we do. And when I first saw this, I thought, that's just bloody genius. That is just death being shown to us as also the maker and weaver of the web of life. And I just stood back and thought, oh my word, that woman is absolutely genius. So, but it does still spook people. You know, a black skeleton with a black scythe dancing about still has its spookiness, but the symbolism, you can see as the spirals curl up into the top right hand corner, there is this sense, a little bit like the Granny Jones tarot, this sense that going forward off into the future there is life. Death may be in the present, but death is simply the beginning of a new cycle, the beginning of weaving a new fabric, weaving a new web, all those metaphors. So no, I'm not uneasy about death. I actually wish we would talk about it more, because I think it would help those who are very frightened of it to talk about exactly what frightens them. Because it's a taboo subject, we don't smash out the details of what troubles us, and we should. We should do that before we end up facing a death, and then you feel awkward subjecting everybody to all your feelings, you know, if you lose somebody, which again, we shouldn't. We should let people do as much blabbing when they're grieving as they want to. So I think I've gone on long enough with this tag. I do want to tag a couple of people. I'm thinking of Marion H. and Hannah at Hannah's Books. Now, for Hannah, if you don't wish to do this, I totally understand. I may be picking something at a very bad time, and if so, I apologize. But if you would like to do the tag, I think you would do a lovely job of it. Thank you very much, David, for thinking of this. I think it's a beautiful tag, even though it is about a subject that we don't always consider beautiful. But I do think it's a subject that is necessary. So thank you, everybody. Hope you are still having a good reading February. Look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.